Well, hi everybody. We are ready to begin. Welcome all to this fourth day of the Fearless Cities. And because this is the first session of the day, welcome to this session. I'm very happy to be introducing this panel on municipalism in Europe, an opportunity to tackle social and political crisis. And why a session on municipalism in Europe? So you all know we are in a framework of social and economical crisis, and as cities we share common challenges. For instance, climate emergencies, social inequalities, fighting for affordable housing, avoiding gentrification, dealing with a diverse society, and so on. And as well, we are in the frame of a political crisis, a crisis of representation, of lack of people's trust in politics and politicians, and together with the rise of far-right parties and movements and Euroscepticism. In front of that, there has been a spread of municipalist and citizen platforms, initiatives over these last years all over Europe. First in Spain in 2015, and where also Barcelona and Cómo won the local elections, and other initiatives won the elections in the main cities in Spain. Then we could see in the frame of the Fearless Cities first edition in 2017, we could see really a lot of municipalist initiatives from all over the world showing up. Then, of course, this in 2019, I was going to say last year, but not, of course, it was 2 years ago. We missed that year, I'm afraid. We could see in the local elections in France that, of course, there were hundreds of candidacies, communitarian platforms, citizens platforms, and they won in some of the cities in Grenoble, Poitiers. We could see also platforms in Toulouse, Montpellier, Marseille. Of course, also in Italy, in these last years, there has been also like a spread of this municipalist platform. There's examples in Bologna, in Naples, and of course we have here one example in Trieste. And then we have recent victories in other parts of Europe. For instance, we know in Budapest, we had also like a new local government. And of course in Zagreb, the most recent one in Zagreb, we have here a representative of this new local government, where a green municipalist coalition, let's say, Eva will explain this later, led by Tomislav Tomasevic, so won the last local elections. So, well, these municipalist initiatives have proven to provide innovative and creative actions and policies at a local level, putting citizens' life at the center and showing real daily life problems, well, how we could solve real daily life problems, setting new ways of and more democratic governance, and of course pressing as well, if they are not in the power, their local governments with bottom-up actions and mobilizing civil society. And for Barcelona and Cómo, and specifically for the International Committee, which I'm here representing, I'm co-coordinator of the International Committee, besides being district councillor at the Barcelona City Council. So for us, the European dimension of change is very important. We have always believed in it, and that is worth working in network, not only as cities, but also as a network of municipalist platform, so to share good practices and also to be stronger in front of state governments and the EU institutions, and of course, in front of big and economical lobbies. So we have organized, for instance, cycles of events, such as From the Neighborhood to Europe, and to show the link of local and European policies that led to the Municipalized Europe Manifesto and project. I will send the link to this project and manifesto shortly in the chat. So to establish collaboration with networks with our EU Parliament representatives, mainly from the Green and Left Party, and of course also with European organizations, so to lobby for a different Europe, the Europe of people. And as we say in this manifesto, if we are capable of imagining a different Europe, we have the power to make it happen. And we have just begun by the cities and the villages. So as we really believe that we can advance together in the European framework, that's why today we have organized this panel, and in order to begin the conversation about transformative municipalism as an opportunity and an alternative to tackle economical, social and political crisis in Europe. And we'll do it by sharing the experiences of different platforms in Europe, some already in local power and some not, maybe attending to be there. So we have today Anna Gilmet, who is architecture student and activist in Old Ala Malmo, sorry for the pronunciation, which is a platform based in Malmo in Sweden. We have also Ricardo Moreira, who is a spokesman of Bloco de Esquerda in Lisbon and member of the Lisbon City Parliament. We have Eva Marcetic, who is an activist and an architect and is one of the founding members of the municipal party and platform Zagreb Jenos. And as of spring 2021, she's an elected representative in one of the Zagreb's administrative districts. And we have also Ricardo Laterza, sorry again for the pronunciation, and he's together with Julia Masolino, currently the spokesperson of Adesso Trieste, and he's also running as mayor for the local elections, which will be held in autumn 2021, so in really short time. Well, thank you for accepting being here in this panel. And first of all, we'd like you to present yourselves, your platforms, your initiatives shortly. So your origin, your goals, your current situation, and following to that, if we'd like to know which are the current challenges that you are facing in your cities. Because we presume that we may have many in common and maybe finding common solutions. And as you know, Barcelona Comú is also a municipalist platform, and it was born in 2014. I'm just beginning myself to explain for those of the people attending the event who doesn't know about us. And so we were born in 2014, and from different social movements and platforms, and together with progressive parties. So we decided to present our candidature to the local elections in 2015. We won the elections then, and then let's say in 2019, we had elections again, and we did not win the elections, but finally we're in a coalition where we are in the local power again with Ada Colau as mayor. So we're still governing, but in coalition with the Social Democrat Party. So the floor is yours. Maybe, I don't know, Anna can begin presenting.
Yes, sure. Hello, thank you for the invitation. I have to apologize because there's a construction site in my building, so if there's a bit of noise in the background, it's because of that. I'm gonna try to speak loud. Altotala Malme, which Altotala means everything for everyone, began about like 10 years ago from groups of people that were coming from what in Sweden is referred to as the like extra parliamentarian left. It was a group of radical left people that were trying to search like new ways of doing radical left politics. And today we are established in 4 cities in Sweden, and we work from our localities in our local groups. And we also have some common platforms at national level where we collaborate on some projects like podcast and magazine we have online. Actually, this summer, we are having a congress to also decide on strategies for at the national level, let's say. And we've been working on a variety of issues from climate action, workers' rights, right to the city initiatives. But what has been always defining our agenda is trying to depart from a position of the everyday life, of the everyday, of what is affecting our lives in a very direct way, which doesn't mean to focus on needs, let's say, but we're interested in creating everyday conditions that can challenge power dynamics on a bigger scale. So we want to work on the questions that both are making our lives better on a daily basis, but that can also bring us closer to having more control over our own opportunities. So for example, an activity to kind of put this in a framework is that in the last 4 years, we organized an event in the city of Malmö, in which we invite people to open their courtyards. And it's a very simple thing of one day opening the door of your building and maybe having an activity inside. And we've seen how this has become a huge success, that every year more people want to join. And it's actually just enjoying one day with your neighbors. But we believe that it's also about power. It's about us realizing that the city could be something else, that we are the ones that can decide if doors are closed or open, if what's happening in our courtyards, in our streets, to kind of create these moments where another city, another reality can feel possible. Yeah. So yeah, I've been active mostly on the right to the city initiatives, but there's several groups working on different things. But this is kind of like the approach we want to have to things.
And what about the challenges? Would you say maybe access to housing, as you are, I think, activists in this?
Yeah. So Malmö is a city that is characterized by a very young population, and it's, let's say, the poorest big city in Sweden. It's also portrayed in the media a lot as a kind of a crime city. Even like Fox News has labeled it as crime city. But despite of this, it's also a city where the worker movement is very present. And there's a lot of political and social organizations that are very active. But I would say the kind of way we've been thinking of crisis in Malmö is also about the changes that are going on in the last years, where the local government has kind of tried to rebrand the city, let's say, with a series of projects, architectural projects, but also, like, for example, starting a university, attracting more creative industries. And for us, this is kind of also a crisis, let's say, and we don't want Malmö to be defined by this narrative of a crime city that can be solved by building a new neighborhood on the harbor and bringing another kind of people into the city. We want to kind of introduce another narrative of what Malmö is, that is based also on its history as a working class city, but also on the everyday life of the city, which is a life of a lot of companionship and solidarity between neighbors, and it has always been this way. So the struggle we've been facing on the last years is how do we create this new narrative, and how do we push another kind of image of what Malmö can be or is in a way.
Thank you, Anna. So we move now to Italy, to Trieste, and maybe also Ricardo can explain us a bit about this, I think, fairly new platform.
Yes, a newborn one, and that's why I really thank you for the invitation, because I'll try to explain how we built up this platform, but for us, it's really important to share with you, but also to learn from you who are bringing a longer experience in the municipalist movement, which were the challenges and the instruments you used to face them. So I really thank you for the invitation, and I'll try to explain something about Adesso Trieste, showing you some pictures like a family album. I hope it will not be as boring as the family album are usually. So I don't know if you can see something. Can you see them? Okay. So we actually started in 2016 with a manifesto, which was titled something like "Let's change the city in order not to leave it," because we collected 10 proposals to counteract against the youth emigration, which was and still is characterizing our city, which is one of the oldest one in Italy. When we published this manifesto, we didn't receive the answer from the traditional politics we were expecting. So we immediately decided to do it by ourselves in a way, to build up the organization we wanted to really change our city. And this is a picture of one of our first meetings in a neighborhood of our city, Trieste. And then in 2018, in Trieste was we contributed to organize one of the biggest anti-fascist demonstration in our city. And that was a really important moment for us because many of us understood that there was something else to do, something more to do, rather than just, let's say, yelling against the television when seeing Salvini or other national leaders talking about and against migrants or something, issues like that. And in our opinion, the point was to try to organize at the local level and build up the organization we wanted and we needed to bring some new inputs in the local context. And we started to do like that in 2019. 2019 was the 300th anniversary of the foundation of the Free Port of Trieste. And we decided to celebrate this anniversary not simply by looking at the past with the nostalgia of the past, but also trying to build hope in the future of our city. And the best way we found to do it was to build up a participatory design process to define the future of our city and also the future of some of our neighborhoods. So in a way, trying to build up our political organization with a bottom-up approach. And another very crucial point of our route was 2020, when the president of the Port Authority of Trieste was temporarily suspended from his office due to a bureaucratic issue. And the first one to mobilize against this decision were indeed the maritime workers, because in the last years, the president of the local port authority managed the port in a slightly different way from the last years, promoting worker rights, reusing the existing infrastructure, for instance, the railway connections connecting Trieste with the rest of Central and Eastern Europe. And we took part in this mobilization not only to defend an innovative and fair way to manage a public good as the port is in every port city, but also to say that that model has to be disseminated in a way, is to be extended to the rest of the city, because that mobilization showed in a very clear way that there was a huge divide between how the port was and still is managed and how the rest of the city, the municipality, is currently managed. And finally, we arrived in 2020, sorry, in autumn of the last year, when we founded Adesso Trieste as a municipalist platform, we are now running for the local elections, which will be, we guess, because we still don't know, they will be in autumn 2021, so in few months. But our goal, of course, is to continue to build up our organization in the neighborhoods of the city from using a bottom-up approach, because we think that elections are just one of the tools we can use to promote the radical change that we want in our city, starting from now. So thank you very much.
Fine. Thank you, Ricardo. And well, now we go to Zagreb, and Eva, you can tell us a bit more about your organization and also your current situation in this coalition.
Yeah, well, I'm, as you said, Elena, from Zagreb je naš, or Zagreb is ours, municipal platform. We formed ourselves in 2017, just before the local elections at that time. The idea was, well, it was, of course, hugely inspired with the events in Spain. But the idea was to gather small leftist and progressive political parties and to form our own municipal platform. From that actually was formed from many activists from all of the topics that were already discussed, like right to the city, workers' rights, migrant rights, and others. We actually gathered together in order to get into electoral politics, and what we thought was best at the time was to, as I said, gather the smaller political parties that did not have much electoral success, but to kind of project this idea of the left coming together finally, and left organizing in a way that can be successful. We chose the city, of course, or this idea of municipal platform, of course, because we were inspired by what was happening in the rest of Europe, especially in Barcelona and other Spanish cities, but also there is a local flavor to that, because when we discuss city politics, a lot of material conditions that people live in are a topic of discussion, and because the position of a city is so specific, you talk directly about direct problems of living in the city, and you don't get mired into what would be the identity politics, well, the politics, nationalistic politics, and other politics that are quite present in our political space, that are, of course, here also as a reminiscence of war, and actually a continuation of this kind of politics and policy of nationalism, and that comes together, of course, with neoliberalism and privatizations and all other things. So what we thought that going into city politics in such a way gives us space to talk about real issues that people face in their everyday lives, and to talk about them from a leftist perspective, but also from a perspective of solutions, which gave us a lot of success, which made us into a movement or a platform that is actually able to attract people, which is able to attract many people, which is able to offer a different kind of conversation in the city, and then different kind of conversation in the country. So in 2017, we managed to get, well, we were formed just 2 months before the local elections, and we managed to get four people into city parliament of 51 representatives at a time. And we managed to get around 72 district council members. So that was a huge and unexpected success, even though it doesn't seem that way. But the way that we worked through these 4 years made us into a major political force in the city, and actually led us to the win just a month ago, a win that was unprecedented in a way in this city. Our candidate for the mayor, Tomislav Tomašević, won more votes than any other candidate before in the direct mayor elections, and we also won 23 seats out of 47 now numbered parliament, and we won most votes in 16 out of 17 districts of the city. So our success was actually quite huge in these elections, which also speaks to the need for political discourse and to change in the city, of course. If we are talking about the challenges, we have some specific ones, and those challenges actually also helped us to get where we are today. As you might know, we had 2 devastating earthquakes last year, combined with the pandemic, that actually made previous city governments look very incompetent, and it just showed all the incompetencies of leading the city through this kind of centralized neoliberal way, where the institutions did not work, the institutions could not answer any kind of any kind of problems that were happening to us. And in a way, like, those were the problems where we had to step up as a community, as a society. And what we had like political representatives that were working only in their particular interest. So it became very painfully obvious that was not working. And I think those catastrophes actually made us look even better than we already did, and helped us to get where we are today.
Fine. Yeah. I guess the effects of the pandemic is one of the challenges we all have to face. I mean, not only in Europe, but so maybe we can talk later as well when we talk about specific actions or policies. So now I give the floor to Ricardo, this time Ricardo Moreira from Lisbon. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about your organization. And also that you are you've been for some time in part of the local government.
Well, yes, for the past 4 years. Hello, everybody. Hello, Ricardo, Ana, Helena. Thank you so much for having us. We are big fans of Fearless Cities for quite some time now, and we're glad that Fearless Cities are back. So Bloc de Esquerda is a radical socialist party, and right now we're the 3rd biggest party in general elections. But we are very small in terms of local elections, and we have been in the past 20 years because it's a relatively new party in Portugal. And as you probably know, between 2015 and 2019, Bloco and the Communist Party enabled the Socialist Party to become government. They are third-way Democrats, social democrats, if you want. And we enabled, together with the Communists, we enabled the Socialist Party government so that we could get rid of a right-wing troika government that had massacred the people for 4 years. And that was a very bad experience, the troika being here in Portugal. And in 2017, in local elections, Bloco elected for the first time a councillor for City Hall in Lisboa, the capital. And the aftermath, because the Socialist Party lost, because we elected for the first time a councillor, the Socialist Party lost for the first time its absolute majority of councillors in the city hall. So they had to negotiate with us, and we had a very clear agenda to do that negotiation. So we had our hands dirty, as you like to say in fearless cities, right? We tried to do that. And maybe I can share the agreement that we did with the Socialist Party here in Portugal. It's in Portuguese, but maybe you can translate it. And it had like 80 points that needed to be covered over the next 4 years. And right now, those 4 years are over, and most of the points we were able to push them through. It was not easy, but it changed the city for better in some ways. But you can't do everything with one councillor. You can't change it all. So our councillor was responsible for schools and education in the capital and for social rights. That is to fight machism, racism, LGBT plus phobia, oppression, to tackle poverty and homelessness. That was our responsibilities. But the agreement was able to create new public housing, affordable housing, to limit the Airbnb presence in the city. And that is a major point, because we had no regulation for Airbnb prior to us entering the city hall. To reduce the price of public transportation, people paid 80 euros for the monthly ticket, and now they pay 40 or 30 euros. And that is a big change for everyday people. And right now the city is more prepared to tackle climate change as well. And we were able to give free school books for every children, and improve school meals, and give free school meals for half of the children in Lisbon. Those were huge changes that were part of our program, and we were able to push them through because of that agreement with the Socialist Party, with only one councillor. And Lisboa is quite different now, but it remains the most unequal city in Portugal. And then after we were doing all this work for about 3 years, and you can imagine the struggle that is this daily struggle to push through these measures, we were hit quite hard in Portugal with the pandemics and with the social crisis that COVID brought. So that's currently our biggest challenge, and we are trying to cut through that. And maybe we can get to that a bit later. But so our goal right now is to reduce inequality in Lisbon, take care of climate change, and mitigate the impact of COVID, the social impact of COVID in people here in Lisbon.
Yeah, thank you, Ricardo. Yeah, I guess in Barcelona is quite similar. I mean, the challenges we are facing and social inequalities, of course, that have increased with, I mean, the effect of the pandemics. And of course, we had also in Barcelona, I mean, when we entered the city council, quite unequal city, no? Some neighborhoods, I mean, had even a longer life expectancy that, you know, people from other neighborhoods in Barcelona, so in the same city. You can imagine that. So of course we have really fought to end with these inequalities. And well, you have just begun, I mean, with the issue of the second question. Indeed, that is like to really explain, of course, if you think that a municipal approach can be an opportunity to face these challenges, and how, and also to explain some specific examples, especially from the two of you who are in local power. Of course, in Lisbon you have much experience, and in Zagreb you have just arrived, and maybe it's more to talk about the future plans or future policies that you are trying to implement. And of course, well, as I said, in Barcelona, we have, of course, developed in this already 6 years in the local power, different innovative policies, and I can give some examples. For instance, the plan to regulate the tourist accommodation, the PEWAT, was a big problem. I mean, at least before the pandemic, I mean, the extent of touristic flats, and of course, it's affecting the housing market, especially the rent market, which super high prices and people, and especially young people, not being able to afford to rent a flat in Barcelona. And for instance, we have the super blocks project, a new concept of city specific areas in different neighborhoods for the pedestrians and for sustainable mobility with more green spaces and extensive use of public space. And in this area of super blocks, we have also this program protecting the schools' environments. So we try that around schools, cars can no longer have access, and that you have more green space. Of course, we have this first local public energy company with green energy called Barcelona Energia, so Barcelona Energy. We also have the municipal dentist, so this is a free service. So in Spain, the health system doesn't cover for the dental health, so you have to pay for that. So we have this municipal dentist for free for the people who cannot afford it, and the free municipal babysitting service for the most vulnerable neighborhoods, and specifically designed for monoparental homes, special mothers alone with children. Of course, we are the city in the state with a higher social investment, and I would like only to point at one specific project, who is called Vila Veïna, so neighbor villa. I don't know how to translate it. And well, this means that Barcelona will be the first city to care in a communitary way, by organizing care in a collective way from the proximity, with 18 communities from 10,000 to 30,000 inhabitants, to provide solutions to care needs no far than 5 minutes away from your home, and in a care system shared and in community. So this is the newest project we are implementing in this social area, no? Just to give an example. And of course, we'd like to hear from you. So if you think that municipalism can really find innovating solutions, and if you can provide some examples. And again, we'll begin with Anna.
Yeah. Well, I think there is an aspect of this that has to do with interest. And that first of all, we are citizens of the cities we live in, and the most genuine interest and will to desire another reality comes from us, from our experience of our everyday in our cities. And we have a kind of, let's call it street knowledge, that allows us to look at issues from another level, a more concrete level, and imagine something else. And the kind of things we've been working in Malmö, for example, we started a rent-free campaign. We have a social center. We have local media channels. We started a mutual aid network during the pandemic. Those were things that we simply wanted to do. There was no other agenda than we wanted things for us, for Malmö, and for our neighbors. And this is the way we think also that a crisis should be approached, in creating an alternative, to propose something new, and instead of defending ourselves from our enemies, let's call it. And I don't know how updated you are on Swedish politics, but in the last weeks there's been a big crisis, because in Sweden, rents are negotiated between landlords and tenants. It's a kind of similar organization that working when you negotiate salaries, let's say. And the right has been trying to push market rents, let's say. This has been a kind of threat from the right for years. And in a way, not very consciously, but the way we've been approaching this is to bring the subject of housing into the agenda, but bring it with other proposals. We are doing this campaign to freeze rents, and that's very inspired by comrades in Berlin that pushed that in and actually got it through. And also we wrote a kind of a housing manifesto that we published online recently, and in a book with other groups of activists and people doing research. And this has been like years of work in the subject of housing, and of trying to come up with our proposals of what do we want to be of the housing market that is neither the current system, because it's also very flawed, and the fact is rents increase every year, even though they're negotiated. And neither is market rents. We want housing to be more in our power for us to decide what we want to do with that. So I think in this sense, the municipalist approach is a bit about that, about the way we as citizens can propose something else that is not what's already in the table, because it's coming from our own experience and our own wishes of what we want to see the city to become. So we believe that it's on this level that we can kind of create a new alternative.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, and interested, I don't know which are your proposals, and from the municipalist point of view, so to face these challenges.
Yes. Well, in order to answer the question, I want to start from the issue I was talking about before, which is youth immigration. In our opinion, youth immigration is just one of the symptoms of a weak economic base, because Trieste is, let's say, a rich city, average, but statistics, as we all know, doesn't tell the whole story. And actually, Trieste is a city which has a very weak economic base, based mainly on services, so the tertiary economy, a growing interest in the huge touristic flows reaching the city. And of course, the pandemic showed us clearly that this is a not sustainable model of development of our city. And we have also a strong economy of rent. So the whole picture shows us that the current situation is not benefiting the most. The current situation is producing a growing social inequalities, but also growing ecological stress, for instance. And the thing we think is really important for us thinking in a municipalist network is that municipalism can reinvent in a way the way that through which public tackle these issues. Because what we saw in the last years, but even in the last decades, I want to say, is that the local institutions neglected all the public leverages a local administration has to intervene in this field. And the pandemic, of course, was a great demonstration of how we really, we really need a public on the side of the people, and building from a bottom-up approach the solutions we all need to our problems in the everyday life. This, in our opinion, has really much to do with, as you were saying before, the politics of everyday life, and also to trying to disseminate what the good practices which were developed also in some of the public sectors in our city in the last years. Previously, I was talking about the port management, but another very good example of how the public can positively intervene in the everyday life of people is the microaree project. Microaree is one of the legacies of the Basaglia revolution. When Basaglia closed the psychiatric hospitals in Italy, the experimentation started in Trieste and Gorizia, so in the northeast of Italy. One of the legacies of this revolution, because we can call it a real revolution, was to reorganize a part of the health system on a territorial level. So trying to understand health as a good relationship between people and their context of life, which is something more than hospitals, something more than drugs, something more than the traditional way health intervene in the life of people. So here in Trieste, we have 13 of these microaree, which are local institutional route in the neighborhoods. It's something very similar what I guess is the idea brought about in Barcelona in the last years. Our idea is that this way of doing territorial health can be extended in other sectors of public life. For instance, energy production. When you have an institution which is very closely rooted in the everyday life of people in the neighborhoods, you are then able to foster some innovations, not only from a top-down approach, which is what we don't want to do anymore, but for sure from a bottom-up approach, together with the people, not only for the people and for the wealth of the people, but also together with the people, which is the best way to make those changes last even after we will be out of the offices. Let's say in our city, we are not yet in the offices in Trieste, but we are already thinking of what will be after our intervention through the public leverages. So that's, I think, the most important lesson we can learn from the past of our city, but also from the good examples and the best practices which were brought about in other cities from a municipalist perspective in the last years.
Thank you. And well, now Ricardo from Lisbon, you were talking about some of the things you've been doing, and maybe you can also provide some example, because I know you've been innovating in the social area, and as well as in Barcelona. We were talking before that you were, not you, but your councillor participating in a debate on that issue, and I think can be quite interesting to give an example on that.
Well, so the question is municipalist experience able to change the reality in those cities, but not only that, the reality in the whole country. And I think that was our goal when we started, and we want to give 4 examples of that. First of all, the school books. So normally in September, before the classes started, families had to spend between 250 to 300 euros in school books every year, different books every year. And that is a lot for a family that receives a little over the minimum wage. So that is quite a lot. And families needed to, that was an enormous burden for a lot of families. So here in Lisbon, we were able to prove that the state, that the municipality could buy those free books for children, for every children in the public system. And once that was implemented for every children from the 1st grade to the 12th grade, that's what we have here in Portugal. Once every children in Lisbon had free books, free school books, then the government reached out for that measure, and now it's national. So the impact that we had was enormous. We were able to prove something. If we do something in Lisbon, we can show that it's possible to do it all over the country. School books is one of those examples. We did the same thing for meals, but the government has not followed our example. Supervised injection programs. Well, maybe you know that Portugal is regarded as an international example for the resolution of the problem of drug consumption. In the 90s, we had a social, public health and security crisis because of drugs. And there was a report with a strategy made in the late 90s that stated that instead of treating people that had consumptions as criminals, you should treat them as patients. I know that now, 20 years later, this feels like, okay, that's the way to go and everybody knows that. But you know that there are still a lot of countries that treat these persons as criminals and not as patients. But we did that. We started that route 20 years ago, and we were able to be, right now, Portugal is considered a national, international example for the problem of drug consumptions. But one of the key parts of that strategy was supervised injection rooms, so that you could eliminate overdose, and so that you could help those persons to find help for themselves if they wanted to. And for 20 years, that was not possible. But then we elected one councilman for the city hall in Lisbon, and we implemented that program for the first time in 20 years, and we proved that it was possible. And now there are other cities in Portugal, like Oporto, the second biggest city, that is starting a similar project because of what we've done here in Lisbon. So once again, what you do at municipal level has a great impact in all the country. The third example is public affordable housing, and housing first for homeless people. Well, we have an enormous public housing problem here in Portugal. We have only a 2% stock of public housing, whereas the average in Europe is of 9%. You understand the disparity that means. 2% is nothing, and those 2% are only for really low income persons, the persons that don't get enough to eat, and for those there are houses, and that doesn't enable us to regulate the housing market. It's impossible to do it with a 2% public housing stock. So the right wing all over the country and in Lisbon doesn't have any problem with this and doesn't have any solution to do this. They don't have one proposal. They think, well, it's a market problem and the market will solve it. It's not true. It hasn't solved it for 40 years and will not solve it ever. And the Socialist Party, they are social democrats, and they want to solve this problem through a public-private partnership. Well, and you know what public-private partnerships are. So the public gets all the problems and the private gets all the benefits of that. So for the past 6 years, they've been trying to do those public-private partnerships, and the private part has gained a lot of money with it, but we haven't seen one single house coming from that project. And in 2017, we forced, through the agreement with the Socialist Party, we forced a new program, 100% public housing for the persons in Lisbon. And we were able to deliver for almost 1,000 families affordable housing, 30% of their liquid income for the first time. And this, it's the first time that a municipality or even at government level, you have affordable housing. We had housing for the low income families, but we didn't have public housing for anyone else. And now we do. And there's a new project for that. It's delayed. We were supposed to have 6,000 houses in that program, but the Socialist Party was not able to construct those. But we now have 1,000 public houses for that. And we believe that in the next 4 years, if we are in office, we need to have 10,000 public affordable housings here in Lisbon in order to start, not to regulate, but to start to regulate the housing market. And the fourth example, and it's very short, is to limit Airbnb. Before we went to office, Fernando Medina, which is the current mayor and was the mayor at the time, had an interview and he said, well, I really don't know what's too much tourism. I don't know what's that. I don't even know what you mean when you say too much tourism. So he wanted an Airbnb and he wanted as much Airbnb as he could get. And the problem is that there were some neighborhoods in the center of Lisbon that had more than 40% of houses for Airbnb. And you can imagine that it's impossible for a family to live there because you can't buy the real estate speculation is too high and you can't buy a house in those neighborhoods because of the Airbnb. For the first time, we were able to regulate Airbnb, to create zones where it's impossible to have more Airbnb and to try and spread it out throughout the city. And we wanted more than that. We wanted the cap and trying to reduce the level of Airbnb in the city. But again, it's been a struggle between us and the Socialist Party. So 4 examples of what we've done here in Lisbon had a national impact. And we believe that municipalism has that strength and that the progressive forces need to be present in local governments in order to change not only those cities, but the whole country.
Yeah, thank you, Ricardo. What you said about Airbnb and sounds familiar to me. Of course, in Barcelona, we had the same struggle with Airbnb, with a lot of demands, indeed, that we won against the company. Well, I mean, the company also demanded us, and then, I mean, they lost. And of course, we have the special plan I mentioned before that, I mean, in some areas in Barcelona, in the city center, you can no longer have a new touristic housing, and of course, fighting also against the irregular touristic flats, because I mean, most of them, they are not legal, no? So illegal, I would say. And of course, it sounds familiar to me also, the struggles with the socialist, well, again, Social Democrat Party, because we suffer that because we are currently in coalition in Barcelona, a local government. And of course, we are also in coalition in the state government, as you know. Now we have, let's say, the most progressive government in Spain, and led by the Social Democrat, and of course with in a coalition with Unidas Podemos, and we are part. I mean, Comunes, Barcelona Comú, it's part of this Unidas Podemos coalition, and of course we are trying to influence this also state politics, and it's hard. It's been hard, of course. Step by step, little by little, I think we'll get to some advances, because of course we need also, for instance, regulating housing and the rents depends on the state laws. So we have no competence at the local level. So we need to influence all these levels as well. So Eva, as for you in Zagreb, which is, I mean, your approach, and of course, what are you planning to do? As you are only 1 month in power, so yeah.
We have been constituted a month ago, so it's there's a lot of things that we need to do. Yeah, thank you, Ricardo. I mean, there are different, everything that you all were talking about were, of course, parts our plans are consist of that also. But I wanted to talk about two separate things. Like one is the question of governance, in a sense that we have formally very decentralized governing structure in the city. We have 218 neighborhood councils, and we have 17 district councils, and then we have the city parliament and the city management. So, those things, those representatives or those bodies were actually used as tokens of democracy in a sense. So what we would like to do, and what is our like main promise, is to deliver this democracy as it is formally actually written down as it is. So neighborhood councils, people who are in neighborhood councils, who are directly linked to district councils, who are directly linked to the city parliament, should in a sense be heard and listened to, and the resources should be delivered to them where they need them. That was not the case before. The case before was that communal services and building services and all of the things that the city does, and also city resources, were used as a ATM machine for the specific class of people and specific kind of group of people. So our first task now is to kind of try and move away from that and actually make some changes in the way we decide about our surroundings, which we hope in a sense that would also influence the way that people are politically active and the way they feel that they can do something in their immediate surroundings through politics. There is one of the huge challenges that we face right now, which is not to be, if we manage to do this would be one of the greatest things. Of course, another thing is city resources, especially city, city real estate, for example. Also, as I was talking, like all of our neighborhood councils have spaces to work in. Those spaces to work in can be turned into community spaces for care and for other needs of the community. Now they are mostly unused or underused. So taking care of these kind of points of communication or points of community is going to be also one of the tasks. The other is city real estate used as a social good. For example, there is a lot of talk on housing. We, of course, have the same situation as in Portugal, in a sense that we have 2% of public housing. We do not control our market, our rental market at all. Actually, here we have, over here, it's a gray zone completely. Tenants are quite precarious kind of group of people, and we have, of course, problems with touristification and gentrification. Croatia is, as you know, kind of a touristic country. So those problems that were already mentioned, we have to tackle them. One of the things that we want, one of the ways that we want to tackle them is, of course, building public housing, but building public housing differently than it was done before. We did see some movement in that direction in Zagreb, but it was done through a specific kind of a way, incompetent and corrupt, of course, with loans that were too high, with spaces that public housing was built that created ghettos and things like that. So the whole system of the way you treat publicly owned resources, in a sense, publicly owned land, to build housing is quite important to us. To actually tackle gentrification in the same way, we have central city districts that are losing people, and we have border city districts that are gaining people because of the housing price. So if you kind of tackle those issues and work with city property in that way, that is also a huge kind of transformation that can be understood from different points of different places in the country. But also one of the innovations that we would also like to bring in is that we offer city land, a certain amount of city land for cooperative housing, in a sense, those social groups that can build by themselves, that can invest for their housing, but cannot pay a market price, can come together and get a right to build on city land, and have this right permanent in a sense, but not have the property, not own the property of the land, not own the land. So like these are the ideas about stopping speculation and things like that. We also have huge problems with our social services that are undercapacitated because their material kind of conditions are very bad. If you have 2% of public housing, how are you going to take care of single parents or people who are unable to live in this kind of market economy and this kind of situation? So we have to also rebuild our institutions in that way. We have to rebuild our institutions that they are able to work, that they are able to understand what their task is in terms of providing social services for many, not just like, as Ricardo was saying, not just the poorest, but then the poorest of the poorest, for it not to be this kind of thing of handouts or whatever, but creating a situation where you can move towards a truly socialist city in that way, in the way you can do it. So if we can show some of those things, democratization of resource distribution in communal activities, if we can use city property not as collateral for, I don't know, some kind of loans or whatever they use it for, if we can use it for social services, we are going to show a lot.
Mm-hmm. So great. Well, as I said, this is the beginning of the conversation. I think we will have more chances, like in the future, to discuss. I mean, the innovative policies that we have developed or that we can develop from a municipalist point of view. But I like to raise, like, the last point of the conversation on the influence on the European policies. And as I said, we organize in Barcelona Comú a series of debates in different neighborhoods of Barcelona, with a name from the neighborhood to Europe, in order to reflect the relationship between municipalism and the European Union. And the debates demonstrated the great interest that European politics generates when it's linked to the priorities of local communities. And this led to a kind of manifesto, and that was called a Municipalized Europe, with 20 proposals for a fearless Europe, which I will share. It's in their website. I will share it right now in the chat. And that leads to the last two questions that I would like you to answer. Indeed, what would you need from the EU institutions to support these struggles and to help cities to face the current social and economic crisis? And how could we influence EU institutions for our goals of a more democratic and fair Europe? Maybe we can use some tools provided by the EU bodies. I was thinking, for instance, in the European Citizens Initiative, Housing for All, that was presented in 2019. This was an example, but of course we can have other actions. So how can the institutions help us, and how we can influence these institutions? And link it to that would be the last questions of, if you could find, of course, useful to have a network, a municipalist European network that could help to support municipalist initiatives in Europe. And I would give the floor to Eva first, because she has to go in 5 minutes. So maybe you can answer first, and then you are free to, you have a plenary.
This is like the hardest question, and you and I have to talk first. I was hoping that I would listen to the others and then say, the same thing. So I don't know. I mean, you mentioned the Housing for All Citizen Initiative. We were also involved in that. I think one of those, I'm not that much familiar with other aspects of the work in European Union bodies, but one of the things that could help us, could have helped us if that initiative went through, was this issue of not calculating expenses for building public housing as a deficit. So that would be a huge thing in terms of actually pushing forward the decommercialization of housing. Also, these corporative issues with Airbnb and Booking.com and others that can only be solved, seriously solved through European institutions, through supranational institutions. It's very hard to solve them on a city level, and many cities that have tried to tackle the Airbnb problem come all to this wall of that they can't get data, they can't access data because of the corporations are somewhere else and things like that. So those kind of things, I'm sure, are present in any other topic, such as health, migration, and all of the things that we need to kind of better our lives in the cities. So in terms of how can municipal network work on that, I mean, I think, having these topics and having these topics together and having these problems being repeated over and over again tell us something about a need to go towards also European Union together, in the sense of asking for changes and having like more power in the network of cities than just cities themselves. I think something like that is already happening. I think Barcelona is also part of that. Hopefully we will be also, but there are some agenda, some social issues and economic issues that we can, I think, through a strong network bring forward toward the European Union. Thank you, and sorry for leaving. I have to leave in 3 minutes.
Thank you, Iva. Iva, I guess we're still in touch, and we are really expectant to see you in the Zagreb City Council and see how things change little by little in Zagreb. We hope so. And so, for instance, Ricardo in Trieste. So, what do you think about this issue of the importance of EU policies to help cities, and also how we can influence for our goals?
Well, I think one of the most important clues we had in the last months on how much we have still to change the European Union is that unluckily we needed a pandemic to have a bit of counter-cyclical policies. A very little bit of counter-cyclical policies, because as we know, next generation EU and the whole EU plan to restart after the pandemic is not enough, and is not enough from many points of view. One of them is that is a quite strong top-down approach. Even if the national states are really much involved in the development of the project, what is left in a corner is all the network of municipalities and local administrations, but also, for instance, all the local society actors, the local civil society is left outside of the definition of the priorities of next generation EU and of the single project which will be developed in the following years. So in my opinion, and I will cut short a long story, EU can revive and can change completely its shape, also its institutional shape, only through the direct involvement of territories. So I think that the idea you brought about of a manifesto of a municipalist Europe is really, really important. And by going on the second question, for us is of a crucial importance to have to be part of a municipalist network. because I think one of the two of the most important characteristics of municipalist movements live on different scales. Here in Trieste, we are trying to learn from each other, so to share knowledge, but also to take care of each other. And I think we can reproduce the same model also on an international scale. So among different municipalist movement. And then I think one other issue which is really important for us now in the electoral campaign is to show to our citizens, to our fellow citizens, that what we put inside our program, our manifesto, our proposals is not like a dream. Someone else in other territories, which are of course different, we have a different social, economic, institutional context, but still you did it. Even though there were challenges, even though maybe the solutions will be only partial, but still someone has the chance to do what we are proposing to do in Trieste. And that's why not just because maybe we have a program which is better than other programs, but also because we have the right tools and the right methodologies to involve permanently the citizens on a local scale. And I want to end with one consideration, which is that I think that the municipalist movement in the last year had the capacity to think about the decentralized policies, not in a simplistic way. So we are in our city, we build up walls and then we solve all our problems within the border of our cities. You know, I think we are really we are aware of the fact that we are facing problems on different scales. For instance, when I think about the management of public goods and common goods, I think mostly of a local scale involvement, which is the one that, of course, allows for the involvement, the active involvement of the citizens on a daily basis in their daily lives. While when I think about migration, climate change, and very broad issues, I think that we really need a network among cities, a network among territories, because that issues are issues on a global scale or a European scale. So the idea that we need a decentralized policy does not exclude the idea that we need also European institutions which are able to intervene on the problems and the opportunities that we are currently facing in Europe.
Thank you, Ricardo. Of course, we are open to help you whatever you need for the next elections and to share our humble experience with you. And let me say that we've been doing kind of learning by doing, because at least at the very beginning, I mean, we were really testing things and they work, and then we could really go on. And I mean, in municipalism is, of course, about listening to people and building things together. And this makes things maybe slower sometimes, but more effective, I would say. And of course, happy to share with you and with everybody our experiences, challenges, and everything. So Anna, which is your opinion on that issue, on the EU level influence?
Well, we are an organization from civil society, so we don't have any relationship to EU as an institution, let's say. And I think in a way it's interesting what you were saying, Elena, of we can't control rents on a local level. We have to go to the state, the national state. Well, that's a bit, I think, a situation we also encounter with the European Union, and as a kind of barrier to things you want to do. And that in a way starts another discussion of why can't local governments decide on certain things. But I mean, this doesn't mean that we are not interested in the European scale, let's say. And I think also this is actually a necessity to achieve our goals. As Ricardo was also saying, the problems we face are global. And for example, when it comes to this issue of housing, when we discuss things to do, we realize, for example, that landlord companies they operate on a global market. They don't operate in our cities only. And this means that, for example, if you want to do a rent strike, this wouldn't affect a company in the same way it did 100 years ago, because they have the same amount of property somewhere else. And the fact that a couple of people in one city do a rent strike is not going to impact much their revenues. So in this sense, we think that the housing movements, for example, need to work together and make actions together to actually impact things. And as I said before, we've been very influenced by what was happening in Berlin, also the social centers in Italy, particularly in Bologna, and we've had relationships with these organizations. And we are interested in creating other kinds of institutions in European level that can have maybe more democratic dynamics, and that we can still collaborate and learn, but creating other kinds of networks that depart from our particular experiences and find common points instead of coming from the European scale top down to the local level. So that's a bit what we think.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. We are also expecting the results of your meeting, no? In that you say you are doing, so to know which are your next steps. No? Not necessarily going to create a candidature for the elections, because of course we believe that we have to be as municipalists also in and outside the institution. So I mean, it's very important to be and to keep the movement and the pressure outside the institution and in the frame of civil society. So wherever it is, I mean, also good luck, and we'll be also in touch with you.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Yeah, and yeah, finally, Ricardo, in Lisbon, I mean, which is your point of view? Maybe you have more experience dealing with EU policies. I mean, from your local government.
Well, you know that Troika and the austerity program left our country and Lisbon in very bad shape, and Troika was an EU idea, right? So to tell you the truth, we don't really expect nothing from the EU, and we expect nothing from the European Commission, because they have done us bad in recent years. What do we think that they should do? Because there's an enormous crisis in Portugal and in Lisbon. Well, for the first time in 30 years, there's hunger in the streets of Lisbon. We are now distributing more than 10,000 meals every day to families that had a job and that had all their lives figured out just a year ago. And 1.5 years after the start of the COVID crisis, there is no response to that. Lisboa, the municipality, had to do something about that with its own means. And homeless, for instance, before the crisis, we had 360 persons living on the street, living rough on the street, and we had a plan for that with a housing first program that would give housing for every one of them. But since the COVID crisis started, we opened 4 emergency shelters for persons living on the street, and more than 900 persons passed through there in the last 1.5 years. And those persons were persons that had a job and they lost it, and they had a house and they lost it. And these were entire families that passed through these emergency centers. And once again, it was the municipality that had to came through, because there was no help from anyone else. housing crisis. In this September, the government will end the moratories for the housing loans, and a lot of families will lose their houses because they won't be able to afford the loans that they had because they lost the jobs that they have. So we need to help these people maintain their houses. And this is coming up next September, in 2 months from now. Public expenditure on infrastructures. A lot of the employment in Lisbon was tourism, and we don't have tourism anymore. We haven't had tourism for the past year and a half. But so if we had the money to rebuild and to build hospitals, schools, if we had the money to build public housing, because we have an enormous shortage, as I've told you before, we were able to create jobs, maintain jobs, and boost the economy. And Lisbon alone doesn't have the means to do that. That would be an European responsibility. But what we've seen from the last year and a half since the COVID crisis began is that they have promised a bazooka that doesn't come. It hasn't come. And for a year and a half, cities and governments have been tackling one of the biggest crises that our generation will have, and we haven't seen one single euro to help here in Lisbon. We haven't seen those resources, and those resources, the bazooka resources that they have announced, are too late, and we know that they're not enough. So we've been talking about new cities that we need to help and build up. And we really need to build those cities, new cities with progressive ideas. And we need to do a new Europe as well.
Yeah, totally right, Ricardo. We expect that the Euro funds that will arrive soon will help, I mean, and to fight against this new poverty in our cities, because of course in Barcelona we've also been providing with food and to a lot of families, and of course the same situation, families and people who had jobs before, maybe precarious jobs related with tourism, but jobs at least. And so we found a situation that a lot of people, thousands of people without any money to eat. And again, it has been the municipality who has been the main supplier of these resources. And well, nevertheless, we expect and will pressure, of course, our state government, because many of the funds will go through the state government, no, to be given then to the territory, and of course we'll ask for direct funds to the municipalities. This is also a big request that we make to the European institutions, that we have more direct funds that we can manage directly from the municipalities to address, of course, this in the first place these social issues and urgent social issues, and that unfortunately we foresee that they are increasing in the next months, because of course we had here this system of ERE that from the government a lot of people are being paid from the state, but this will end, no, and maybe they are fired from their jobs in some months. So let's see if we can really get some of these funds and try to solve this social crisis and, of course, economical crisis. Well, there are no questions, I mean, from the public, but indeed we have reached the end of the session, because it's already 5 and we have other sessions going on in Fearless Cities. You know, you have the program. This session, as the others, are being recorded, so I guess most of the people can see it, and then after the session, and also they can comment on that. And I remember that we have a space, a network space in fearlesscities.com website, have already copied. But there are some debates going on, and I guess in the future, in the following days, we'll have more debates open. And I wish that we can have our own space on European municipalism or municipalism in Europe, so we can share our experiences and continue the conversation, of course, with you and with other platforms, actors in Europe. So thank you very much to all the speakers. It really has been a pleasure and to learn about your experiences, the past ones, the present and the future ones. And we expect to keep on collaborating and being in touch. And thank you to the people following the session now, or maybe in the following days. So thank you very much, and well, see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. See you.